All right, we're back. We're good. We're good.
Okay. So what problems are discussed with the plans to evacuate the Jews to the east, and why did these men clash during the discussion? Basically, I think it's just that some of the men had some morality and didn't want to just, like, kill everybody. They were kind of like, well, like, what type of evacuation are we talking about? Like, yeah, we all want the same thing in the, like, end of just removing the Jews, but certain men in the discussion wanted a more a more civilized way of creating their perfect society.
Yeah, I forgot what the guy's name was. I wrote down my notes as guy in the blue suit. He was the one that was like, oh, my superiors said this wouldn't happen, and that no Jews would be like killed, but they would be like purged and like removed. And he seemed to be the only one who really understood the severity of the situation. And then also the lawyer, um, who was sitting directly across from Heydrich. He was the one who was saying, "Oh, we should sterilize them, but not execute them." And they're like, "Oh, we're violating so many laws," and the other guys were like, "We don't care." And he kind of, it seemed like from what I understood, it felt like he didn't want all the Jews to die, but at the same time, he was kind of, it was weird. It was a really weird like feeling, but definitely the guy in the blue suit was one who was very against the whole extermination.
Yeah. About the what is it? Defertilizing?
Yeah, it was sterilization.
Sterilization.
Yeah.
That was really just, like, I guess, remarkable how they were discussing who had to be sterilized, and who didn't, and just, like, the discussion of, like, who would be evacuated from the society versus who had to be sterilized, going back to another question: how do they define who is considered a Jew? What was going through your mind as you listened to the discussion? Sorry, it just, like, a cloud passed over me and it started pouring. So they define Jews as anybody who acted Jewish or looked Jewish or practiced the Jewish faith or were related to a Jew, unless your child wasn't considered a Jew by those same definitions. Is that what you got?
Yeah, it was like they were very technical about what they expected or what counted as a Jew, and there was this one general who was speaking to like the big fat guy, like, for lack of a better term, like that's how I remembered him, and saying like, "Oh, I hear Heydrich has some Jew blood in him," and it was one of those things where it's like if he did ask that question and it turned out to be true, it's like everything that Heydrich was saying was kind of self-inflicting, and that he would eventually fall into the category of being a Jew.
Well, he would, but I think he also kind of made sure that he wouldn't, because it was if you acted Jewish. But then when they had that little discussion on the side about, like, learning Yiddish and having that rabbi teach him Yiddish, that almost, in my mind, when I watched that, was just like, wait, that's kind of scary, because later on in the war, when that, was it a general who learned the Yiddish?
Yeah, it was Eichmann. Yeah.
Once he proved to not be useful, he could have been executed for knowing a Jewish language.
Yeah.
Which would then cause him to act Jewish, therefore being Jewish, right?
Yeah. It was, honestly, I mean, the whole thing is just messed up anyways, but it's like they created so much more, even with this meeting, because they're like, okay, we have the minutes, and then we're like destroying it. It's like they were trying to do something that they knew was wrong, but they were going to do it anyways. And I think some of the guys in the meeting did have some morality and be like, try to not so much stop it, but talk some sense about it and say, hey, we really shouldn't be doing this, or let's like reevaluate. But instead, they kind of were just like, they got pushed to the side and they kind of just stopped talking, you know?
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear.
Yeah.
I mean, we pretty much talked about it, but is there anything you want to say on what were the varying ideas did the group discuss to get rid of the Jewish problem?
Or like the varying ideas, like there was like changing the laws, there was deportation, and then it was essentially like either put them in camps or have a mass shooting, or then they started talking about the industrial way, which was the carbon monoxide. So I mean, like it was something where they were like kind of throwing ideas around, but it seemed like uh, they had an agenda and they had an end goal and they knew what that was, but they were just kind of going through this process just to make it seem like they were discussing it when in actuality they were just going to do it anyways.
Yeah,
You know?
the kind of striking thing was how they were going to separate veterans and put them with the elders in the like older ghettos, and then how they wouldn't spare anyone because then technicalities would come up.
Yeah.
Even though all of it was based on technicalities, it was just kind of weird. But yeah. Why were they looking for a more industrialized solution? I mean, just effectiveness, right?
Yeah, they're just trying to speed up the process of getting rid of everyone.
They just wanted to be efficient, and I almost think that I don't know if it was portrayed so much in the movie, but so that they could finish before they got caught or before someone stopped them. They wanted to just go through as much as they could and really eliminate as many Jews as they could, or at least sterilize them and prevent them from kind of continuing the race. Race.
And then there was a whole
quickly as possible.
Yeah, because there was a whole part about like once they started to move into foreign areas that like being Jewish didn't qualify as like a culture, but or an ethnicity, but it was just a religion. They started to discuss more things like that. But it's I don't even know, like it's baffling.
Yeah, it's kind of remarkable also because you see a lot now. I don't know if we're supposed to talk about modern day, but I'm going to just bring it up a little bit, and like how the way that they categorized it by like whether you looked it or you acted it or you practiced it or you spoke it or you were part of the culture, and that's really incredible to me because I have a lot of friends. I go to a predominantly Jewish school, so I have a lot of Jewish friends who claim to be atheists, but when asked about like what, like on a form or something, they say they're Jewish because it's a community and because it's a culture, not really because they believe in God. And so it was just kind of remarkable to see that everybody, no matter what type of Jewish you were, had to be
like how
eliminated.
you identified. I get that. But I mean, for me, it's like one of those topics where, and this is why, like, honestly, like, I'm taking this course also. It's like, it's a close to home topic. Like, being Jewish, it's like something where you're like, okay, I'm learning about my culture. Like, I know it's a religion, but I consider it also to be my culture. Like, people ask me, like, Jake, what are you? I'm like, I'm Jewish. They're like, oh, no, like, what's your background? I'm like, I'm Jewish. And they're like, no, like, where are you from? And I'm like, I don't really know. It's like, I'm like Russian and stuff, but it's more of just that kind of way that you identify. So it does create a problem, I guess, for the Germans when some people identify, or they might not be, or they consider themselves atheists, but they have Jewish bloodline. So the whole thing became very, very complicated.
Yeah. The last question is, what is the meaning of the story that Heydrich tells Eichmann in the end?
Yeah.
I don't really know. I didn't really get a huge meaning out of it.
It's set like they gave like the direct meaning in the movie of he's saying, oh, if we kill the things that we hate, if we kill all the Jews, then we have nothing to live like nothing left to live for. So I mean, I guess like going with that, it's more of if this was their goal, and it seemed like people all from going over this kind of stuff, it seemed to me more that the Nazis turned this from a war into honestly just like a genocide of the Jews. But it was more of him pointing out the fact that maybe if we do get rid of all the Jews, this could be a problem for the nation, saying that once they're all gone, what are we going to do? Maybe the nation will turn on us or something like that. That was the one thing I really like thought it could mean, but it's I guess it's up to interpretation.
I mean, I agree with that. I think that in a sense, I just blanked.
Yeah, it's all right.
So there's some saying that I'm blanking on the saying, but it says something along the lines of like, you have to pick what you live for, and you live for either good or bad. As long as you have something, you'll be alive. And a lot of so we're learning a lot about how people kind of separate themselves from the horrible acts that they're doing, where we just watched a movie on the death penalty and how the person who actually does the injection doesn't even see it as killing someone. They just are doing yet another procedure. And so the Nazi generals and people who didn't fully have a hatred towards the Jews, they just kind of were doing what they were told for the good of the country. Once they finished their mission, what were they going to live for? And I guess that scared a lot of people. I mean, it should have scared them, because they were doing what they were told. They didn't have a purpose. And when you don't have a purpose, there's no point in living, I guess. Okay, so then moving on to the book. For Night, why is there no resistance by the Jew to the treatment by the Nazis?
Like in the camps or like before?
I'm going to say it's both. We can do it in two separate questions. Before, I think it was just because they didn't know any better. They were just kind of told by some government official. And I mean, if a police, they always tell you in a much, in a separate sense, if a police officer were to come to your house and say, oh, we have to come in, you would let them. You wouldn't question their authority. And that's a mistake that a lot of people make, because what if it's not a real police officer? You wouldn't know, but you just don't question it because you're afraid of the greater authority. So I guess that's why before the camps.
Yeah. Well, I mean, his family was well connected with the police, so I guess for him it was more of just not doing anything that he shouldn't be doing. Oh, but it was also more of by the people. They thought, okay, this isn't really affecting us immediately, so we're not going to challenge it. And when it did happen, it was more of the people not knowing what to do because they had so much time to prepare for it, but they kind of missed their shot, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, they, okay, so they, yeah, I mean, they didn't want to, they turned the other cheek because they didn't want to question the authority. They didn't want to be put in a situation, so they were kind of well, maybe if I don't fight it, they won't come to me. But then, yeah. So once they were in the camps, I mean, they were just scared. They're scared that they aren't enough to fight the Nazis. And in reality, they probably weren't. The Jews in the camps couldn't have really rebelled in any substantial amount. They didn't have weapons.
Yeah. and also they were just so weak from the treatment, and like
Yeah.
physically and mentally they just became subservient, and that's what happened towards the end also, when he was like, oh, like I'm looking out for my father, but I like need to start thinking for myself, and he kind of resented that fact about him, that he's like, I need to take care of me. And that was one of the things where it said that there were sons beating fathers and things like that, and it's just like it changes your whole mindset if you're put in a situation like that.
So I just read this book called Man's Search for Meaning, and it's, have you read it?
No.
Okay, well, it's about the Holocaust, and it's pretty similar. It's just another person's story. And he talks a lot about how you are so dehumanized inside of the camps that you stop seeing your actions kind of as your own. You're just part of the system, and if you are part of the system and you're good enough to just like be efficient, maybe you'll be alive. And it's just a way to keep yourself alive without too much thought, because if you think too much, you'll go crazy. And that like very few people had enough. Not yeah, he actually talks about how not that many people had enough courage to think about anything, because it takes too much of a toll on you to try to fight it.
Yeah.
How the only people that tried to escape were the ones that thought that they were going to be killed anyway, because it was kind of their last thing. Same with like, okay, so they would trade these like points, I guess, that they would get. I don't remember exactly how it worked, but for cigarettes or for bread. And you kind of had to choose, and you only had enough for one a day or 9 cigarettes. And the ones that would ask for the cigarettes are the ones that you knew were too far gone emotionally, and that they wouldn't come back, and that those were their last few days because they had lost the will to live.
Yeah.
So yeah. Next question. Eliezer learns how atrocities and cruel treatment can turn good people into brutish individuals. What system do the Nazis put in place to make this occur? How are the Jews treated like animals? Does Eliezer feel like an animal? Do the inmates treat other inmates like animals? Yes,
Yeah,
on all accounts.
Yeah, we kind of just talked about that a little bit. So, I mean, I guess we answered that.
Yeah. What, if any, are the positive lessons for the Holocaust for Wiesel and for us? For him, he learns how to be human, how to relearn, I guess, sympathy and like human nature, and like goes off of like how to go into survival mode and then how to come back from that.
Yeah. I think it's also kind of whatever. I think it's like kind of has to go with the idea that of resilience, and also kind of a different type of strength, where you want to just give up and you want to just kind of die, and he just kept going and just like kept on pushing through that, and also seeing his own, like being with his father for almost every step of the way and always trying to be there. It was something where it's just like a value, I guess, where
I was lucky.
Yeah, and how important family was to him. So in that regard, I guess those were some good qualities that came out of it. But overall, it kind of was. I mean, it's the Holocaust.
Yeah, it's the Holocaust. There's not that great. Yeah. Nothing great about it. And then the last question, and I think I have 5 minutes until I have to go to class. So,
all right, sorry.
How does this written account of Elie Wiesel's experiences compare with the account of what occurred at the Wannsee Conference?
I mean, it kind of it compares in the sense that the issue of housing with like the ghettos and things like that did come up, and also dealing with seeing the the ovens, and not so much. There was talk about the gas chambers, but they didn't end up going there, and it was just kind of like a different way to kill them and through different and dehumanization. But besides that, I mean, it varied quite a bit.
Yeah, I think that they at the conference they don't see it, so they don't have to think about it deeply enough that it'll affect their humanity. They're seeing it as another business deal, as a discussion that they need to have to continue on with their society. And they're just seeing it as a business deal, as a transaction. They don't see the actual murder that's happening that Elie Wiesel sees.
Yeah.
And then, there's another, like, compare and contrast the two accounts, the movie and the book, of the Holocaust. I mean, we kind of have done that, but just the difference that I just pointed out, that they see it very systematically as a genocide is, and Wiesel sees it as a human who was in it, as something that happened.
Yeah. It's like it's two very different viewpoints of the same kind of idea or what happened. It was like the meeting was talking about what was going to happen to them, and then Wiesel's the night was the account of everything that did happen. So, and that cool. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, cool.
I think we did everything.
Yeah. All right, we good?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Sorry
All
that
right.
I took your lunch period.
No, don't worry. Have fun at homecoming.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.